costing our society the most, and it's the most painful to ourselves. So global citizenship and stress are two really important reasons that we are focusing around the world on social and emotional development. And that means it's not for children that already have depression and anxiety. Of course, they need social emotional learning. It's for all of us. This is not a problem for resource rooms. This is a way in which we all have to learn new ways to be with each other and to lift all boats in the way that we talk about in public health. So in the 1994, I and a couple other people, Daniel Goleman and Roger Weisberg, a group of us who had already been working in this area for about 20 years, began to meet together and form a society, CASTLE. And we felt there were four reasons that we thought this was an important part of every child's education. The first is what Mrs. Yang said, and that is schools often ignore or don't have sufficient resources to solve the problems of children's mental health. And so one way to think about this more effectively is to lift all boats by giving all children skills to reduce the number of children that have mental health problems. So there's a story about a guy, and he's at the top of a waterfall. And he sees all these people going over the waterfall, and at the bottom of the river, there's an ambulance. And the ambulance is picking everyone up that falls through the waterfall, off the waterfall, and taking them to the hospital. And then another ambulance comes, and it picks up another person that fell off the waterfall, and takes that person to the hospital. And so it goes on all day, ambulance after ambulance taking people to the hospital. And the man finally says, why don't we build a fence at the top of the waterfall? And that's the issue. As long as we just treat mental health problems in children that already have them, we will never make our society a healthier place. We'll never reduce the number of children that have problems. We have to take a public health approach, just like we do to heart disease. Right, where everyone knows what's a healthy diet and what's not a healthy diet. Everyone knows that walking every day is good for our hearts, right? And so we have practices that every one of us use, not just people that are at high risk for heart problems. It's a public health approach. And so we believe in CASTLE that we need to begin to take a public health approach, not just treating children that already have problems, but thinking about how we create a healthier society. The second thing we want to do is advance the science of social emotional learning, to actually prove what is effective and also what is ineffective. Just like in medicine, we want to show which surgeries for back pain work and which ones don't work, right? Medicine is changing all the time. In the same way, the science of social emotional learning is changing. And we need to know up-to-date information on the science of what is effective. The third is we want to expand practice. Because if we know things are effective, and you took my poll, we all voted, saying that this is important, how do we go about expanding the practice? What are the leverage points in society? And lastly, we want to improve policies. And in fact, right now in America, there's a National Commission on Social Emotional Development, and you can Google the National Commission, and you'll see lots of new information on research in this field. So in 1997, we wrote the first book. We call this CASTLE 101, Social Emotional Learning 101. It was the first book, and it laid out guidelines in each grade level for what are the skills that children should be learning in order to become competent, healthy adults with positive well-being. And the idea here, of course, is that we need to coordinate schools and families and what we call community programming, for example, after school time, to improve social, emotional, and academic learning. And when we do that, children will both be academically successful, they'll be physically more healthy. Most importantly for me, they'll have good social relationships. And in a democratic society, they'll become engaged citizens. And we know that this is critically important in a democracy to have people engaged in discussion about what kind of society they want to have. More recently, just a year ago, the first large handbook came out with many, many chapters. It's a bit dry and academic, but it shows the growth of science in this area over the past 2 decades. So SEL is now an international policy issue. Krista and I travel around the world, and everywhere we go, people are talking about the need to innovate in education and in public health to support social emotional learning for children. And examples are in the UK. Scotland is a beautiful example where Scottish schools now have social emotional learning as a central part of education. And in our work with the PAS curriculum, we're working in, I would say, somewhere around 300 or 400 schools now in the UK, in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, etc. Singapore, I visited Singapore almost 10 years ago, because Singapore also is very much a post-manufacturing country, and they realize that the most important skills that Singaporeans will need in the future are social-emotional skills. Of course, they need technical skills. Those are easy compared to being a really good person. Canada is a great example. In British Columbia, one of the provinces on the west coast where Vancouver is located, has passed a law that social responsibility, which is really just the word for social and emotional learning, is now equal in education to reading and math and science. Okay? It should be taught at the same level. Okay? So this is very innovative. And you see there are some countries that are really leading this from a policy standpoint. And of course, many of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden and Denmark, have a strong focus on this. And I met Krista in the Netherlands in 1986. So that's 31 years ago. We just had our 30th wedding anniversary. And that was because even back in 1986, the Dutch were already interested in this issue. Australia was a place we do quite a lot of work in both Western Australia and in Victoria. But there are new frontiers. China, as well as Taiwan, are places that are so important to the future of our global world, and there's growing interest there. Obviously, we have evidenced by the visitors we have today. And the African continent is also now becoming more interested. I have colleagues now that are working in a number of African countries to introduce social emotional learning with young children. So why is it important? First of all, there's a paper, a scientific paper. Actually, it's now published in a journal called Child Development. And it shows that it did what's called a meta-analysis. And a meta-analysis takes many, many studies and combines them together to make an overall conclusion. In this case, it took 217 studies, done mostly in the United States, but some in other countries. These were careful studies, trials, that involved about 300,000 children. Okay? And what it suggested is that we can improve children's social emotional skills by 23%. Of course, if we're teaching social emotional learning, we should improve those skills. We can improve pro-social behavior, the ability to get along with others. But most importantly, from a policy standpoint, there was an 11% improvement in children's standardized test scores in math and reading. We also see reductions in problem behaviors and emotional distress, things like anxiety and depression. So why is that the case? Why people were very surprised at the beginning about these findings. They were not surprised that there's an improvement in mental health. But many policymakers, especially in education, were surprised that it improved children's achievement test scores. So how would it do that? How would it do that? So I asked teachers in Shanghai the other day when we were visiting, and they told me two reasons really, I think. The most important reason is that when children have good social emotional learning, the classroom becomes a more healthy environment. And when the environment is more healthy and the teacher has a better relationship with the students are more engaged in learning. They're more attentive. They can concentrate better. And when they are attentive and they concentrate better, their scores improve. Okay? Now we can think about this from a neuroscience standpoint, because when we understand the developing brain, we know that the emotional connections in the brain are very, very close to the thinking skills in the brain. And you all know this. You all know that when you get upset, like you're very angry at someone, or you've had a really bad day, or you've been in traffic for an hour in your car, and you're just so frustrated that you don't think straight. We all know that when we're upset, we need to calm down first to really use our thinking skills. And that's because the cognitive part of the brain cannot be well accessed when the emotion parts of the brain are flooding the brain with distress. Okay? So when we teach children how to become more aware of themselves and others, how to communicate their feelings, how to resolve problems, we see that they're able to concentrate better, and when they concentrate better, they learn more effectively. So my friend Daniel Goleman wrote the book Emotional Intelligence many years ago, and what he said is that this social emotional learning is a master skill. It underlies all effective outcomes. But we can also think about this from an economic standpoint. Economists are very interested in the question, does social emotional learning, is it a good economic investment for society? And you can see that the result shows that there's about a savings of $11 for each dollar that was invested in 6 different SEL programs that were studied in the United States. So what did they look at? They looked at things like, as adults, the children who have schools that use SEL, are they more likely to pay taxes? Are they less likely to be arrested and have criminal costs? Are they likely to be physically healthier, so they use less medical insurance? Okay? And what we see is that's the case. And the PASS program, which I'll talk about more later today, has shown a benefit of $21 for every $1 invested. And that's mostly because when you improve both academic abilities and you decrease mental health problems, you have a healthier society. We're using less services that are stress-related services. So how is it implemented? So now we know that SEL has effects from randomized trials. We know that it affects our physical well-being as well as our mental well-being and our academic achievement. We know it's economically sound. That's a pretty good set of arguments, isn't it? For why we should be moving forward as a society. But how do we implement it? So we think about social emotional learning.